Imagine this: you're standing in formation, with the blazing heat of the sun hitting your face and the dust falling like a veil over your eyes, making it hard to see. The air is dense, almost suffocating, and your hands are still covered in dried blood. You've fought, you've survived, but now you know that the worst is yet to come. Next to you, your comrade in arms, your friend, but the fear you feel has no name. The commander walks in front of you, his gaze cold and full of contempt. Everyone knows it, 1 in every 10 of you will not return from this battle, and it won't be quick. How can you keep calm when you know this could be your last day? Welcome to the darkest side of the Roman Empire. This is the place where fear is your constant companion, where discipline is law, and disobedience is punished with death. But how did we get to this point? How far would you go to obey? Today, we'll explore the brutal reality of being a Roman soldier. From the age of 17, young Romans were recruited to serve the empire. It wasn't just a job, it was a destiny. When chosen, the young Roman had to swear that a sacramentum, a solemn oath that committed him to serve for at least 25 years, a quarter of a century dedicated to military service. This oath was a contract for life, a promise of sacrifice and loyalty, not just to the commander but to Rome itself. But what this commitment truly meant was a life marked by the strictest discipline. From the moment the young soldier crossed the gates of the Roman camp, his life changed forever. The first days were a mix of fear, pain, and fascination, as everything they had known up until then was left behind, and they began their transformation into a Roman war machine. The training was brutal and constant, starting with long marches to make the body accustomed to the weight of weapons and gear. But they didn't just train in combat techniques, the life of a Roman soldier was also psychologically shaped. The empire needed soldiers willing to die for the cause, and the first step was to break their individual identity and turn them into a unit. Romanization was not only a military process but also a conversion to a new life, one of duty, obedience, and sacrifice. Roman training didn't just forge soldiers, it created beings of relentless resistance and discipline. From dawn, the sound of trumpets would break the silence, signaling the start of a day without rest. The marches, long and exhausting, were just the beginning. Soldiers carried over 40 kilograms of equipment, including their weapons, and walked kilometers under the scorching sun, with aching feet and trembling legs. The physical effort wasn't just a test of endurance, it was a form of teaching. Weakness had no place in the Roman army. But the training didn't just involve exhausting marches. They also had to learn to fight hand-to-hand with deadly precision. Each soldier was trained in the use of the empire's most feared weapons, the gladius sword and the pilum spear. Combat training wasn't just about learning to fight, it was a battle against fatigue, pain, and exhaustion. Any mistake during combat didn't just mean a technical failure, it was a loss of honor, and the correction came immediately, often with physical punishment. Roman discipline was strengthened with each repetition, each march, each strike. Soldiers weren't just trained to be skilled in combat, they were trained to be immune to pain, to be unbreakable on the battlefield. The life of a Roman soldier was a continuous cycle of fighting against oneself, against one's own limits. War wasn't just fought against the enemy, but against physical and mental exhaustion. Roman discipline was not just based on fear, but on something much deeper, a sense of loyalty and honor. From the very first day, soldiers learned that being part of the Roman army meant more than simply following orders. Unity was sacred, and loyalty to Rome and to one's comrades in arms was the foundation of everything. The empire knew that, for its armies to be truly effective, they needed soldiers willing to sacrifice for the common good, to put the well-being of the legion before their own. Fear, although present, was not the only motivation. Soldiers were inspired by the pride of being part of the greatest and most powerful army in the world. The Roman soldier didn't just fight to obey a commander, he fought for Rome, for its honor, and for the glory of the empire. Every victory, every battle won, was proof that the effort and discipline were worth it. Camaraderie among soldiers also played an essential role. Each soldier trusted his comrade, knowing that only together could they overcome the greatest challenges. Moreover, the Roman military structure maintained a rigid hierarchy, but also a strong sense of mutual responsibility. The centurions, the highest-ranking officers, were not just leaders but role models. These men were the pillars of discipline, responsible for keeping morale high and ensuring that every soldier gave his best. Obedience was not only driven by fear, but also by respect for those who led the legion. Decimation was the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of Roman soldiers. It was not merely an execution, but an act intended to reshape the morale of an entire unit. If a group of soldiers showed cowardice, disobeyed a direct order, or failed in their mission, this terrible punishment was applied. 1 in every 10 soldiers was randomly selected to die, and not by the executioner's hand, but by the hands of their own fellow comrades. It was a way to discipline the entire legion at once, a brutal reminder of what happened when discipline broke down. The process was as brutal as it was effective. The selected soldiers were stripped of their weapons and armor, left defenseless before their peers. The others were forced to beat their comrade to death using sticks, stones, or whatever they could find. This punishment did not only strike the condemned man, it shattered the collective morale. Each survivor not only had to face the death of a friend, but also live with the guilt of having participated in the execution. Decimation was rarely carried out, but its mere existence within the Roman army kept soldiers in line. The fear of being chosen was so great that even in the most desperate battles, soldiers feared internal punishment more than the enemy in the field. Fear was not only a tool of control within the Roman army, it was also a powerful weapon on the battlefield. The Romans understood that beyond their military strength, they could use fear to demoralize the enemy before a single blow was struck. Roman generals didn't just win battles through force, they won with psychological terror, both against their foes and within their own ranks. During campaigns, the Romans often staged demonstrations of power, displaying their discipline and organization to intimidate the enemy. Enemy armies knew that facing a Roman legion meant facing more than just armed men, it meant facing a perfect, unstoppable machine, where every soldier acted with calculated precision. It was common for Roman generals to make their enemies believe defeat was inevitable, triggering panic and disarray in opposing forces. Furthermore, the fear of internal punishment played a major role during combat. A Roman soldier knew that failure on the battlefield could mean a life of suffering, humiliation, or death. This internal dread translated into fierceness and determination in combat, often breaking the will of the enemy. Rome understood that to dominate its adversaries, fear had to strike first. The centurion was the central figure within the Roman army, not just as a commander, but as the heart that kept the discipline and spirit of the legion alive. While generals planned grand strategies from a distance, the centurion stood on the field, shoulder to shoulder with his men, ensuring that every soldier fulfilled his role with precision. He was the immediate leader, responsible for keeping morale high and discipline unyielding. To be a centurion was not just to be a military leader, but to be a role model. Soldiers looked up to their centurions not only as superiors, but as examples of what it meant to be Roman, strong, courageous, and above all, relentlessly disciplined. Each centurion was tasked with delivering immediate punishment for minor infractions and rewarding effort and bravery with greater freedom or prestige within the legion. Moreover, centurions played a vital role in shaping the character of their soldiers. Through their presence, they forged the true spirit of battle. Through their severity, they taught that discipline and obedience were not merely requirements, but essential virtues for survival and the glory of the Roman Empire. In ancient Rome, soldiers were seen as the pillars of the empire's greatness, but their daily lives were far from the glorified image of victory that Roman society projected. Though celebrated in triumphal parades and monuments, life in the army was harsh, marked by personal sacrifice and a discipline that left little room for rest. Roman soldiers lived under extreme conditions, far from the comfort that victories were supposed to bring. During campaigns, they slept in crude barracks, ate basic rations, and spent long periods in the field without seeing their families or enjoying the pleasures that Roman society offered its citizens. Their personal sacrifices were not always recognized, and the gap between the public image of the victorious soldier and the harsh reality of daily service created a disconnection from Roman society. However, Rome understood the importance of honoring its soldiers. Upon retirement, a soldier was often granted land or a pension, but glory and recognition rarely reached the common soldier during active service. The life of a Roman soldier was a constant struggle between the aspiration for glory and the sacrifice required to attain it. Looking back, the history of the Roman army reveals a brutal truth: blind obedience was the price soldiers paid for the glory of the empire. From the oath of service to the most extreme punishments like decimation, everything in a Roman soldier's life was designed to eliminate doubt, dissent, and questioning. Loyalty and discipline were ultimately more important than the life of any one man. The fear of disobedience, of being seen as weak or undisciplined, was so deeply embedded in every soldier's soul that it became their strongest guide. The question was simple: obey or die. Would you dare risk the unity of the legion for your own life, for your own humanity? Today, we live in a different world, but Rome's legacy remains. Modern power structures, though not as drastic as those of ancient Rome, still demand loyalty, obedience, and conformity. How far are we willing to go to follow rules, to maintain order, to belong to a cause? The Roman Empire shows us that while discipline can uphold an empire, the cost of that discipline may be nothing less than the soul itself. So when you are faced with an unjust order, when authority pressures you to follow something that violates your own judgment, remember this: Romans did not march only for the empire. They marched for absolute obedience. And that was the true strength of Rome.